حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ به من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له. ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. وقال الله تعالى بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. أما بعد. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Ramadan Kareem to all of you, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the ability to perform all acts of worship in accordance with the Sharia of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and with complete sincerity of heart, hoping for the best reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this world as well as in the akhirah. There's a very famous hadith from the Prophet ﷺ, which is a muttafaqun alayh hadith, reported by both Imam Bukhari and Imam Muslim, which is very well connected with the month of Ramadan. It is one of the oft quoted hadith, which comes from Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhu. And he mentioned that Kana Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam ajwadun nasi bil khair. Wa kana ajwadu ma yakunu fi Ramadan hina yalqahu Jibril alayhi salam. وكان يلقاه جبريل كل ليلة في رمضان حتى ينسلخ فيعرض عليه النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فيعرض عليه النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم القرآن فإذا لقيه جبريل كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أجود بالخير من ريح المرسلة. So let's look at different dimensions of this hadith. That the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم was even usually the most generous of people in doing acts of goodness. So the word is bil khair. And ajwad from jud is generosity. And he would exceed even his own standard of generosity in Ramadan when he will meet with Jibril alayhi salatu wasalam. And the story goes that the Prophet would recite to Jibril alayhi salatu wasalam whatever Quran had been revealed previously. And in the last year of his life, in the last Ramadan of his life, he recited it twice. Hafiz Ibn Hajar, who is a commentator of Sahih al-Bukhari, his book is Fathul Bari in more than 20 volumes. He mentions that after that Ramadan, the Prophet ﷺ called his Sahaba, Ridwanullahi alayhim ajmain, and recited the entire Quran to them. And he mentions it from a hadith narrated by Fatima radiallahu ta'ala anha. And this recitation is called Qira'atu Irdatul Akhira. It's the recitation of the last presentation of the Quran. And he completed the Quran twice. And one of the maxims of Hanafi fiqh is that if there are different things reported from the Prophet ﷺ, they will go with the last actions of the Prophet ﷺ, because there is nothing afterward to abrogate it or to add upon it. So they say that although it's good to finish at least one recitation of the entire Quran in a year, it's better to do it twice, because this is what the Prophet ﷺ did in the last Ramadan. The question that comes, and Ibn Abbas radiallahu mentioned that when Jibreel will meet with the Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet ﷺ will be more generous than a rain that distributes goodness in terms of bringing rain and causing the crops to flourish and so forth. So the question that comes to my mind and our mind is, in what way was the Prophet ﷺ more generous? When we talk about generosity, oftentimes our understanding is giving money to others, not being stingy in terms of holding money. The Prophet ﷺ did not have a bank account. There is no hadith that he would keep his money in a shoebox or under his pillow. He would distribute whatever came to him, except for some income from a garden of Sadaq, from which he will give the sustenance, the yearly sustenance to his wife. So there was no other money that he could give more during Ramadan. So how do we explain this hadith and what can we learn from it? That he was ajwadul nasi bil khair. The word I think there is khair. Khair doesn't simply mean giving money. Khair is acts of goodness. So we'll look at some of these things. So now, when we talk about sadaqah, the word sadaqah in Quran in Surah Tawbah is used in the context of zakat. Verse number 69, there are 8 categories of giving zakat are mentioned. So from here the scholars divide that there is al-sadaqah al-mafruda, which is an obligatory sadaqah or giving, which is the zakat. And then there is al-sadaqah al-nafila, which is not obligatory, which is optional. The mafruda or zakat is stipulated in the Quran. The recipients are also mentioned. And the details are to be found in the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, how much should be given. This is not the topic of the khutbah. But what we are talking about is very well encapsulated in Arabic. رغب الشرع الإسلامي بالتصدق والإنفاق وبذل المال في سبيل الله دون تهديد لمقدار هذا الإنفاق أو كيفيته أو مصارفه. Very comprehensive explanation, I would say, that Islamic Sharia has motivated the people. And he says 3 things: tasadduq, infaq, bazlul mal. They cannot be translated as the same thing. So tasadduq is doing sadaqah, which means doing acts of goodness. Infaq is spending, and again, not spending simply from mal, spending from the knowledge, from wisdom, from expertise. And bazlul mal. Now, if you look at the 3 things, are they mentioned randomly, or is there a method to it? Is there an order in it? If I look at it, tasadduq, acts of goodness, not everybody has the mal to give. Zakat is for people who have the ability to give. Infaq, if you have some expertise, you can do that. But tasadduq is something, doing acts of goodness is for everybody. If you withhold that ability, then I think you will be held responsible before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because it doesn't cost anything. And one of the best sadaqah, and there is a big hadith from the Prophet ﷺ, is that if you smile in the face of your brother or sister, it is a sadaqah. When I was in medical school, one of the first lessons that I learned in anatomy from one of the demonstrators who seemed to have a very good sense of humor is that it takes 26 muscles to frown and 6 muscles to smile. So it doesn't cost anything to smile. So smile at each other after you're done with the khutbah. It will be counted as a sadaqah in Ramadan, and we know every act in Ramadan is multiplied in Ajr. Next, he mentioned that there is no fixed miqdar. There is no fixed amount to that. And there is no kafiyat, how you should do it. Or masarif, in what activity, for what purpose you should do it. It's a very open theme from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that be good human being. Do good to others as you would want Allah to be good to you. And it is again for fi sabilillah. So there are different kinds of sadaqah, and I want to just rush through them and focus on a few on them. The first is it'amut ta'am, giving the food, feeding. And it doesn't mean feeding the poor people. So the scholar said that inna it'amut ta'am badluhu lil muhtajina wa ghairil muhtajina, those who are needy and those who are not needy. But muhtajina comes first. So obviously, you can invite anybody to your home, but also look around and see who are the people who are really needy, who need to be fed first. And it is a means of seeking nearness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is a hadith from Abdullah bin Amr bin As radiallahu ta'ala, and he mentions, Anna rajulan sa'ala Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, ayyul Islam khair. Whose Islam or which Islam is the best. Now, one would have expected that if you spend the entire night praying or reciting the Quran, if you spend a year every day fasting, if you donate every bit of pence that you have, that would have been the answer from the Prophet ﷺ. No. He said two things. That you feed the food, again, without any specification. As I mentioned, when it comes to zakat, there are stipulations. But when it comes to sadaqah, there's no stipulation. So he did not limit giving the food to the needy only, but there is a verse of Quran which I will talk about. And then that you say as-salam to anyone and everyone that you know and don't know. From which there is a fiqh derivation that you can say assalamu alaikum to even a non-Muslim, because if you're passing by in the road and you see somebody coming in your neighborhood, you say assalamu alaikum. You don't know whether he's a Muslim or not, but again, this is a debatable issue. So as I mentioned that the hadith does not limit feeding to any specific group, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has emphasized feeding of three individuals. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, وَيُطْعِمُ الطَّعَامَ عَلَى حُبِّهِ مِسْكِينًا وَيَتِيمًا وَأَسِيرًا. And they feed the food, give the food out of love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But another explanation is that despite their love for the food, they still give to others. Three categories: miskeen, yatim, and asir, prisoners. I think all of us have read this verse in our life more than once, and I've, like you, have read it more than once. But it dawned upon me only last week when I read it, that here I am preaching to people, emphasizing feeding of yatim, miskeen, and asir, prisoners. But what have I done for the prisoners? Wallahi, this dawned upon me as I was giving a khutbah, and I said, I'm to be blamed for it. I will be held responsible. There are a lot of prisoners, Muslim prisoners as well as non-Muslim, in Massachusetts. So after I was done with this khutbah, I actually went to some of the trustees of our masjid, and then I called a gentleman who has been a Muslim longer than I have been a Muslim. He's a convert to Islam, but practically speaking, he is a Muslim much longer than I have been, a much better Muslim. He serves at one of the correction facilities in Massachusetts. He has been preaching there, converting people to Islam. So I called him and said, what can we do? Can we send some food, some fruit basket, something? And the correction facilities would not allow these things. But I said, you know what you can do? He said, I'm looking for a good dictionary of the Quran to give to these people so that they can understand the Quran. And I said, just go ahead and order whatever copies you want, and inshallah, masjid will pay for it. So that's something that I wanted to get off my chest and mention to you, that, we have been neglecting a part of our own community, our own people. Many of them are converted Muslims, or those who go to the prison and then become Muslims. And what have we done for them? Do we pay a visit to them? Do we ask about their wellness? Do we talk to them? Do you have any family that you want us to take care of? Believe me, all of these things started coming to me, and I don't know how many times I have read this verse, but never thought about this thing. May Allah forgive me. The next thing will be Anwaw Sadaqah al-Jariya lil Mayyit Bina Masjid. That one of the running sadaqah jariya for dead ones, your dead relatives, loved ones, is to build a masjid. The Prophet ﷺ said, Man bana masjidan yabtaghi bihi wajhallah banallahu mislahu fil jannah. That whoever built a mosque for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah will build a house for him in the masjid like it. In fact, in a hadith, another hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, Man bana masjidan lillahi ka mifhas qatat or asghara banallahu lahu baytan fil jannah. Whoever builds a mosque for the sake of Allah like a sparrow's nest, or even smaller, Allah will build for him a house in paradise. And here the scholars mention that building a masjid doesn't necessarily mean building a $5 million masjid, or just building a masjid. It also means, and he mentioned, tarmeem al-masajid, islah mirafiqiha wal musharakata fi tanzifiha. Repairing and restoring the masjid. Every masjid needs some help. Things are falling apart, pipes are loose, there is some leakage, basement needs something to be fixed, doors need to be fixed. Those who have the ability should be looking out for ways in which they can help, helping each other. Even in fact, making arrangements for their Friday prayers. maintaining the website of the masjid, calling people to come to the masjid. And I always remember something, and tears come to my mind. There was a brother, his name was Abu Aman, and he passed away a few years ago. He was like the unpaid, unassigned, humble caretaker of the masjid. He will be totally invisible when you have people around you, any party. As soon as everybody has left, this guy will pick up his broom and start cleaning the masjid and leave only after he cannot see simply a speck of dust on the carpet of the masjid. May Allah give him the highest daraja in Jannah. Then Ziraatul Ashjar. And there are such people to be found in every community. The Prophet ﷺ mentioned about planting the seeds or planting the trees. That ma min muslimin yaghrisu gharsan or yazra'u zar'an فَيَأْكُلُ مِنْهُ طَيْرٌ أَوْ إِنسَانٌ أَوْ بَهِيمَةٌ إِلَّا كَانَ لَهُ بِهِ صَدَقَةٌ. So the word sadaqah is coming here. That any Muslim, if a Muslim plants a tree or sows seeds and then a bird or a person or an animal eats from it, it is regarded as a charitable gift or sadaqah for him. One of my most favorite hadith is that the Prophet mentioned that if you are about to plant a tree or sow a seed, and someone comes running to you and says, Qayamat is here, the Prophet said, go ahead and plant that seed or tree. And what more can I say afterwards? There's a story from Persian literature which many of you may be familiar with. There was a Persian king called Noshirwan. He and his acts of justice are very well known. So one day he was riding his horse and passing by a forest or something. He saw a very old man planting a seed. So he stops by and he starts laughing and saying, oh man, can you really hope to eat the fruit of this tree? And the guy said, oh, king, do you see all those trees around you? He said, yeah. He said, would you like to eat some fruit? He said, yes. I said, who planted it? You didn't plant it, your father didn't plant it. They were planted by people decades ago who never ate from it, but you are eating. So I'm planting this, someone someday will be eating from it. Next is Kifalatul Itam, taking care of the orphans. The Prophet ﷺ mentioned, Ana wa kafilul yatimi fil jannah hakaza wa qala bi isbihi as-sababa wal wusta. That I and the person who takes care of the yatim will be together in Jannah just like these two fingers. Few weeks ago I was listening to the radio talk about orphanages. And the speaker was lamenting that there are no more orphanages in the Western world. I don't know if there are orphanages in the Muslim world. But when I was growing up, and I know my own uncle spent his childhood in an orphanage, and I used to go and visit him. And I still remember his happy face when people would go and visit. The other kids will also feel happy when somebody came distributing sweets or something. But they took really good care of my uncle. He matriculated from there. There was a library. He was bringing books for me from there as well. And those were run by only a few, 4 or 5 families in Karachi at that time. But they were very well-maintained orphanages because those who built were the ones taking care of it. Honestly, I don't know if there is any orphanage left in Pakistan. Maybe there are in India or not. But there are yatims that, again, we have neglected, and I'm the first to admit it. It also mentioned, there is beautiful hadith from the Prophet that if you are taking care of a yatim and you have some mal, he said, invest that mal. Otherwise, it will diminish its value. In fact, our Imam at WIC said something, you might disagree with him. He said, Zakat is the penalty you pay for not investing your money and keeping it in the bank. You may disagree, but this is what he said, We should be smart to invest the money, masjid's money as well as school's money, endowment funds. I've already mentioned quite a few of them. So taking care of the yatim's mal, providing them with food, providing them with good dress, taking care of all their needs, including the need for education. Then Hafrul Abar, digging the wells for water. Not many parts of the world have facility or access to potable water. In a hadith, the Prophet ﷺ mentioned, I've just read it in English, whoever digs a well, no thirsty soul will drink from it, whether it be a human, jinn, or bird, except that Allah will reward him on the day of judgment. Now, I'm at a stage where many of my class fellows are actually passing. Just last year, probably a dozen or so of my class fellows passed away. Our time can be any time. But alhamdulillah, some of my class fellows have started a project to which all of us are contributing, my class fellows, is that we are arranging for digging of wells in the memory of those who have passed away, not only the class fellows, but also their parents and other loved ones. So large number of wells have been dug in different parts of Pakistan where there is no drinkable water. In Hadith, Sa'd bin Ubadah asked the Prophet, "Oh Allah's Messenger, mother of Sa'd has passed away. What shall I do for him?" He said, "Dig a well." So he did it and he said, "This is for Sa'd's mother." Then the next thing is water fountains. Water fountains in the masajid, in the schools, and in the marketplaces. Where people can drink water. And again, the thought came when I was doing this khutbah and reading about, doing some research. There are so many malls in Massachusetts. There are malls in Texas where I've heard that people have rented some space so that people who go shopping can also pay over there. Can we think about something, doing something like this in the Natick Mall or whichever mall we want to go? Having a fountain, having a place for wudu, and a little place where it shouldn't cost that much, given the size of our community. Those are the kinds of things that we need to have a vision, we need to have a leader to do this. And I can only think of it, I'm poor at it, implement these things, but I think that we should start thinking about these things. Bina al-Madaris, Bina al-Dawrat Tahfiz al-Quran, establishing places where children can memorize the Quran. Bina al-Mustashfiyat, and this is what I want to talk about for the next couple of minutes. Jews have done much better than we have done, no question about it. They have thought about the need of their aging population way more than we have. There are Jewish homes, which are nursing homes, rehabilitation homes, hospitals, that is right, many other places. They are not just limited to Jews only, but they provide extra facilities to their people as well. And I had a first-hand experience when my father was in a nursing home for 10 months and he passed away, and his only complaint was, "I don't get halal meat. How much can I survive?" One of our brothers was actually in a psychiatric facility for almost a year. When he came back, I visited him, and it looks like he had lost 50 pounds. And I said, "How come they're not feeding you?" He said, "Yeah, boiled vegetables, because I cannot eat anything else, no halal meat." But these are the things that we need to be cautious of, we need to be conscious about, and do something. That our responsibility is not towards establishing a masjid where we can pray 5 times a day and have tarawih and eat prayers and a Sunday school. Good. This is only a start. What will happen to me when I'm old and I cannot walk to the masjid and my children don't have the time to talk to me? What will I do? Is there a place where a few Muslims can get together, at least go in the morning, where my children could drop me off and I could talk to people, have some halal snacks and pray Zohar and then come home? There is none, practically none. When will we think about doing these things? The cost of real estate and building such things is skyrocketing. When will we invest the money into some real estate and start thinking about starting these projects? أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولذكر الله أكبر. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. So actually going on the topic of building the hospitals and healthcare facilities, if we cannot build and we are not in a position to do it now, at least we can approach some of those rehab facilities and hospitals. They have now started having some religious leadership over there, go there and chaplaincy and so forth, that we can arrange for some halal meat to be delivered over there. We can arrange for some Quran, some prayer room over there, things like that. Then Tawzi al-Masahib, distribution of the Quran. And I was kind of intrigued by this hadith that I read, in which the word Mus'haf was used by the Prophet ﷺ himself. So I'll read it in Arabic. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم سبع تجري لعبد بعد موته. 7 acts will continue to benefit a servant after he is died. وهو في قبره. Even in the qabr. Why did he mention وهو في قبره? Because we have to think about Azabul Qabr as well. Not just a day when we will be resurrected and the decision will be this way or that way. Even in the qabr, these actions can help a person. And he mentioned, Man allama ilman, whoever taught knowledge. I won't just rush. Or, I'm just reading, constructing a canal for irrigation, digging a well, planting a date palm tree, building a mosque, and the Arabic part, or warrasa mushafan, handing down a written copy of the Quran and leaving a righteous child who seeks forgiveness for him after his hadith is Musnad al-Bazzar, hadith number 2773. The Prophet himself used the word mushaf. Quran was being written during the lifetime of the Prophet on different parchments and other things. It was not collected in one volume. But he had the vision, he knew that one day it will be collected in the form of a mushaf. And distributing the mushaf, especially if somebody is going to Makkah and Medina, you can say, okay, distribute some over there. But we can distribute it to the prison facilities as well. And that's something that we have to start thinking about and distributing in the hospitals too. They won't prohibit you from doing. And the last hadith that I want to mention, very comprehensive about different types of sadaqah that we can do. Tabassumuka fi wajhi akhika laka sadaqah, wa amruka bil ma'ruf wa nahyuka 'anil munkari sadaqah, wa irshaduka ar-rajula fi abdi dalal laka sadaqah, wa basaruka lirrajuli radi al-basar laka sadaqah, wa imatatuka al-hajar wa shawkata wal azma 'an at-tariq laka sadaqah, wa ifraguka min dalwika fi dalwi akhika laka sadaqah. 7 acts that don't cost anything, and they're counted as sadaqah by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. First is smiling in the face of your brother or sister. Smile at each other. Commanding good and forbidding evil is charity. You're giving directions to a man lost in the land is charity for you. You're seeing for a man with bad sight. Keep looking for people who need assistance. You're seeing for a man with bad sight is a charity for you. Your removal of a rock, a thorn, or a bone from the road is a charity for you. You're pouring what remains from your bucket into the bucket of your brother. Think about those days of desert. It's a charity for you. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the ability to do any act of goodness in His path that will become a shining light for us in our qabr and on the day of judgment when we are walking on the sirat. May Allah accept it from all of us, and may Allah forgive me if I made any mistake. Couple of requests have come. An infant, Maryam Ahmad Khan, daughter of Hajra and Fahd Khan, was born prematurely. So parents are requesting for dua that she gains strength and she grows perfectly and comes home and spends a healthy, long life with her parents. Their brother Aftab Bashir is hospitalized and diagnosed with cancer, and his family and friend are requesting for dua. Allahumma Rabban Nas Adib al-Bas Ishfi anta shafi la shifa illa shifak shifa la yughadiru saqama. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasana wa fil akhirati hasana wa qina adhaban nar. Rabbana la tuzigh qulubana ba'da idh hadaytana wa hab lana min ladunka rahmah innaka antal wahhab. Rabbana ighfir li wa li walidayya wa lil mu'minina yawma yaqumul hisab. Rabbi irhamhuma kama rabbayani saghira. ربنا اغفر لنا ولإخواننا الذين سبقونا بالإيمان ولا تجعل في قلوبنا غلا للذين آمنوا ربنا إنك رؤوف رحيم. ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين واجعلنا للمتقين إماما. ربنا هب لنا من الصالحين ربنا هب لنا من الصالحين ربنا هب لنا من الصالحين. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى ال محمد كما صليت على ابراهيم وعلى ال ابراهيم انك حميد مجيد. اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى ال محمد كما باركت على ابراهيم وعلى ال ابراهيم انك حميد مجيد. ان الله يأمر بالعدل والاحسان وايتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون واقيموا الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله. Make your line straight. الله أكبر. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahman